Hello and good evening. Today is Tuesday, September the 20th. It is week number 3, and this is PLAR History and Geography, and it begins right now. Again, my name is Jonathan, and I am your teacher for this course. So that means that if you have any questions in regards to this course, you can always ask me. Like I mentioned, this is the beginning of week number 3. We're moving along nicely up this course. I noticed that we have Fort Hope logged on to the Bridget software. I know we got Dina M from Fort Hope, so hopefully she'll be with us throughout the night. Yes, this is PLAR History and Geography. We're live right now at Wasser and Sulaco. This is term 1A. Again, just to go over some details before we get started with today's lesson. Again, how you can participate and listen and be active in class is simply go to your Learning Center and call in the WASA studio, and then we can listen and communicate there back and forth. You can also get in touch with me during my office hours. So we're in my office, so you can give me a call, ask for Jonathan or my extension 2221. Feel free to send me an email if you have any questions or need to send me anything. My email is on the screen at jho@nnec.on.ca. And if you haven't already done so, again, feel free to add me as a friend. The more friends I have on Facebook, the greater it feels. Again, my Facebook name is Jeho Wasa. Just search for it. Again, you can always send me or inbox me through Facebook as well. Again, just a reminder, you do need your textbook for history and geography. So again, lesson number 1 to lesson 3 is history, and geography contains lesson 4 to lesson number 5. Again, your workbook contains all of your assignments and questions that you need to complete before you can write your tests. So again, make sure you have your workbook as well. Again, if you have internet access in your community, feel free to download Smart Bridget. That way you can see my notes, my screen, what I'm posting, what I'm highlighting during class live. And again, if you want a USB stick with any lessons or information, again, just let me know and I can get that set up for you and set it off on the Express absolutely for free. All right, are there any questions? Hopefully we'll have more students and others calling in throughout the night. All right. So today we are going to wrap up and finish up lesson number 1. This is our last lesson for lesson number 1. We'll finish that up. So over the next hour or so, we're going to be looking at Canada in the decades of the 1920s and the 1930s. What Canada was like, what transpired, and so forth. Again, last class, we wrapped up assignment number 2, looking at Canada involvement in the First World War. So again, we're moving along the timeline. So again, we ended looking at 1918. So now we enter the new decade of the 1920s. And then we'll also be talking about the 30s as well. And then we'll wrap things up by looking at assignment number 3. One of the majors and big assignments that you have in this course. So, without further ado, we shall begin. So let's get to some of our learning goals and key topics that we will be discussing over the next hour, 2 nights, live right now in Sulaco here at WASA for PLAR History and Geography. Again, our focus are just 2 decades. So we're looking at 20s. So I like to call that a decade of hope. And why it was called the decade of hope. Then we'll be looking at the 30s, like I promised, the 30s. Mainly the Great Depression and all the struggles and challenges that transpired because of that. Then we'll pretty much wrap things up by looking at women in terms of women's history again, but more specifically the temperance movement and how they wanted to improve and change society in their point of view. In terms of equality, in terms of equal rights, and mainly getting the right to vote. So those are our main focus for tonight's class. Again, looking at the decade of the 20s, 1920s, what happened within that decade, otherwise known as, I like to call it the decade of hope. Then we'll fast forward, look at the 30s, look at mainly the struggles that transpire in that because of the Great Depression. And then we'll wrap things up looking at social and political movement in terms of Canadian history and so forth, known as the temperance movements. All right, any questions? Any questions? Again, feel free to ask any questions about today's lecture and class. So let's begin. I'm going to give the class a bit of background content of what the 1920s were like in terms of political, economics, and a bit of social movement as well. Again, this is not in your textbook, but this is just additional information that will help you to understand the changes, what continued as we looked at Canada's history or Canadian history towards present day. So again, this is not in your textbook. Again, this is just additional information. So we're going to start by looking at new leadership. So again, we're looking at prime ministers. Again, they're key in terms of how they shape and change the culture and the identity of Canada. So we start off by looking at Arthur Meighen. Who is Arthur Meighen? Again, you may not have recognized his name, but he was once Canada's prime minister for not very long, hence why you may not recognize his name. He was prime minister for pretty much a year between 1920 and 21, and maybe bits a part of the 1926 as well. He wasn't really in office for really long, because why? Because he favored high taxes. He increased and ignored unemployment issue that was happening in Canada, and he simply refused to take the oath of acting government. And as a result of that, he was given the non-votes of confidence. And as a result, he was really not in office much longer. Hence come a man named Mackenzie King, again a very popular Canadian Prime Minister throughout time. He is on the Canadian $50 bill. So Mackenzie King was pretty much Canada's Prime Minister throughout the 20s and throughout the 30s. So really two key decades when King was in office as Canada's Prime Minister. One key standout that King established in 1931, the Statute of Westminster. It pretty much gave Canada its own control to govern without the interference from Britain. Remember a couple weeks ago and even last week how we talked about Canada was a part of the British Empire. We were a colony of the British Empire, and pretty much whatever Britain did, Canada pretty much followed along. So as we enter the 30s, the 20s and 30s, we start to move away from that shift, and Canada starts to gain its own identity. So we start to be able to govern and make changes in terms of political and social and laws in Canada without the interference from Britain. So that is the slow progress that Canada has made. In terms of the economy in the 20s, there was more goods being traded back and forth in the United States, or from the United States, than Britain. Again, we started moving away from Britain, from Europe, and we start going back towards our neighbor down south in terms of the United States. Also in the economy, there was an increase in industry, hydroelectrical production, and investments. Great time to be rich because everyone wanted to be rich in the 1920s. In terms of citizens and Canadians, there were new attitudes, modern society, growing middle class, and there was a lot of improvements happening in school. So again, lots happened after the First World War. Again, we started to see this movement of change. Hence why I like to call the 1920s the decade of hope. A decade of hope. Why? It was also known as the Roaring Twenties. The Roaring Twenties. Why again? Because it was time of excitement, time of prosperity, and simply just good times. Again, everyone wanted to be happy, excitement, have good fortune, good luck, and really look towards the future of what it can entail. This mainly really happened towards upper and middle class citizens or folks in Canada. So pretty much anyone that was really upper class, middle class, or higher in that range. Anyone that had pretty much money, wealth, or status. It was an exciting time and times of opportunities. Things that they can grab onto and just go with it for the upper and middle class. However, for the poor and working class, it was not so much exciting time. It could be times of disappointment, uncertainty, and it was time of insecurity for the poor and working class. So not everyone was really happy that the 20s came along. It just depended on their social hierarchy status based on the political and social status as well. So again, the middle class and the upper class, again, exciting times of opportunities, whereas the lower working poor class, again, disappointment, uncertainty, and times of insecurity. They were not sure. So what do I mean by times of excitement, times of prosperity, times of opportunities? Well, in the 1920s, a lot actually happened. A lot of change happened. Again, there was increase in industry, urbanization. So homes, cities, communities, towns start to grow. Homes start to be expanded. But more specifically in the 20s, it was a chance for some to purchase brand new consumer items. Yes. Chance to purchase brand new consumer items. It could be the refrigerator. It could be a battery operated radio. It could be some fancy electronics. Or it could be a washing machine. Okay, those are just some new invention that people can actually start buying in the 1920s. But more specifically, the telephone was invented in the 1920s by Alexander Graham Bell. The telephone, again, came in the 1920s. The automobile, cars, trucks, transportation, automobile started to boom in the 1920s. In terms of the automobile, it became financially accessible for a lot of families. 6 out of 10 families had cars at the end of the 1920s, which is not a huge number, but back then, that is pretty significant. Nowadays, pretty much everyone has some kind of vehicle that they use, but back then, 6 out of 10 families had a vehicle or an automobile by the end of the 1920s. This is significant because as more people start to afford and purchase new cars, trucks, it led to new roads being constructed, expanded in terms of highways, in terms of new rules and regulations, in terms of stop sign, traffic lights, and so forth. Again, that is a whole new lesson on its own. But again, the automobile was huge. It was growing. Cars started to have colors. Again, back then there was not many choices in terms of colors, but different types of colors and models would start being built. So that all started in the 1920s. The radio also came out in the 1920s. The radio, again, a lot of people listen to the radio, to their favorite station. Could be some top 40 music. That's how we listen in terms of WhatsApp classes as well. So again, the radio came out of the 1920s. So again, a lot of new consumer items came out in the 1920s. The telephone, automobile, and the radio. The radio. Electricity, again, that started to progress as well. Medicine, that's another one. So insulin came out in the 1920s. So patients or citizens with diabetes can now have insulin. Again, that came out in the 1920s. Again, just a lot of advancement and movement in terms of technologies happened in the 1920s. The stock market grew and doubled in value. There's no sign of slowing down. Hence why this was time of excitement, prosperity, and opportunities. Again, it was not slowing down. People were making a lot of money back then very, very quickly. But keep in mind, even though all these great things happen, not everyone could afford it. Like I mentioned earlier, again, if you were a middle class or upper class citizen, yes, you can buy a telephone, a car, a radio, a refrigerator. But for the poor working class, they couldn't really afford this. They couldn't really afford this. So keep in mind that a lot of Canadian society, or more Canadian society, there are more have-nots than haves. Okay, more have-nots than have, which means that a lot of citizens did not have these fancy consumer items or technology back in the day. They were there, they were available if they could afford it, but a lot of people didn't have this, even though this was known as the decade of hope and so forth. So how did the 1920s ended? How did the 1920s ended? Well, the 1920s pretty much wrapped up and finished how it started and how it began. Canada was caught up in a recession, so the idea of being modern is not as important as having a job, food, and shelter. Okay? So again, those simple necessity of life and living is more important. So everyone's more important about having jobs, food that they can eat, roof over their head, and shelter. So that's pretty much how the decade of the 1920s really wrapped up and summed up. Great, awesome. We got Fort Hope called in. Hi there, Fort Hope. Can anyone hear me there?
Yeah.
Hi, is this... Oh, don't tell me, don't tell me. Let me guess. I know who this is. Laura.
No.
No? This is not Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Laura? Am I right?
Yeah.
Awesome, I knew it. I recognize that voice. How are you tonight, Laura?
That's
Good? Just good? Anything exciting happening right now in Fort Hope? No? Just the same old, same old? Is there anyone else there with you right now in the Learning Center in Fort Hope?
no.
Just yourself tonight?
Yeah.
Alrighty. What happened to Rebecca? You don't know?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, that's alright. That's alright. So again, yeah, we're just continuing looking at lesson number 1, looking at the 1920s. Did you finish lesson assignment number 2 yet? That done? Are you still working on assignment number 2?
Yeah.
Still working on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need any help with it? Any questions? If you want, I can stop my lesson right now and we can spend some time and finish up assignment number 2 if you would like. We can work on it together. That way you can finish it.
So hang on. I just did number 2, question number 2 only.
Question number 2. Did you finish it?
That's the one I did. Yeah.
Okay. What about the rest of it? Still working on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want me to stop my lesson right now and pull up last week's lesson, and that way you can work on it and finish it right now?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah? All right, let's do that. Let's do that.
Mm,
Let's do that. See what we got here.
I didn't get to. Oh,
All right. We'll work on.
that's fine.
So I'm gonna pull up last class, Thursday's class up on screen for Laura and for Hope. That way we can work on it together right now, so that she can finish it. That way I know that she can finish it. Before she get any further, and so forth. So Laura, you need to finish up assignment number 3. Question 3. I'm sorry.
What's that?
You need to finish question number 3.
No.
No. Which question do you need to finish then? Question 4. Question 4.
No.
No. Are you done assignment? Are you done assignment 2 then?
No, I said, were you asking if I finished it?
Yeah, I'm asking. Are you finished assignment number 2? Because I know I marked assignment number 1 from you. I'm asking.
No, I didn't finish assignment 2.
No?
No.
Okay. Do you need help with assignment 2? I have assignment number 2 questions on my screen right now. We can work on it together. That way I can help you, if you would like.
We're trying to... Bridget is not loading up. Bridget is not loading up.
No? Okay. This is like not working at all.
I'm trying to connect.
Just trying to connect. All right. Do you have your textbook with you though?
Yeah.
Yeah? And I'm assuming you have your workbook questions with you as well?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do some old school technology and go straight to the textbook. So you said you finished question number 1 and question number 2. Is that correct? You still need to do 3, 4, and 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that right now. So question number 3 says describe the income war tax. Describe income war tax. So, Laura, if you can turn into a textbook on page number 5.
Okay.
Okay, so page 5, you have your textbook page 5, where it says under in capital and underline in bold, conscription and war at home. It's in that first paragraph right there. Okay?
Yeah.
So you read through that paragraph and look for the bolded words such as income war tax or income tax. That's your answer right there in that paragraph. So read that paragraph. We'll skim through it really quickly. And the answer is right there, okay, for question number 3.
I remember writing them down. I think I might have did it on a piece of paper.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Can't find it though.
Can't find it though? Well, you can just write it out again or type it out again. Whatever works. So long as you just do the assignments and get them to me, It's all that matters. It's all that
Okay.
matters. And question number 4 asks, what was the guilt cause and what did Germany have to do after the war? Again, that's on the bottom of page 5. Okay, bottom of page number 5. Okay, hopefully that helps, Laura. So again, look for the keywords such as guilt cause highlighted in bold, and that should tell you the answer right in that paragraph or right in that sentence. And question number 5, describe the League of Nations. Again, keyword League of Nations. Again, that is also within that same paragraph at the bottom of page number 5. Again, look for the keyword and find that answer. Alrighty there, Laura?
Yeah.
So hopefully you can, again, all you need to finish up assignment 2 is page number 5 in your textbook. Okay, so income war tax, remember, it was supposed to help pay for the First World War, but it was designed to be temporary to help pay for the high cost of the war, but we still have it nowadays known as income tax. Whereas the guilt cost, remember, after the war, Germany lost, and people started pointing fingers at Germany in terms of how they started the war. So the guilt cost, remember, it came from the Treaty of Versailles. So pretty much blame Germany for causing the war. And because of that, Germany had to couple all things. So in your textbook, it tells you what Germany had to do that was outlined in the guilt cause. So that was question number 4. And question number 5, describe the League of Nations. So as you recall, after the First World War, Canada and other countries got together, had a little meeting, talked it over, and just decided that they would create a little group or organization called the League of Nations, where they would prevent any future war from happening. So if something was wrong, they would go through negotiation, talk it over, hug it out, and hopefully not cause another war. So that was the purpose of the League of Nations. Okay, Laura? Did that help a
Okay.
little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you can finish up assignment number 2. I know you're almost done and you're working super hard. Any other questions right now, Laura?
No.
No? So you're on the right track now and know where we're at?
How far is it? It hasn't loaded yet.
It hasn't loaded yet in terms of Bridget? Okay.
It hasn't connected.
Does it usually take this long?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, eh? Well, hopefully that loads up. Well, let me know when that loads up, okay?
Okay.
In the meantime, just work on your textbook. So go through page number 5 in your textbook and look for those last 3 answers, okay?
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to continue in talking about today's class in terms of the 1920s and 1930s for everyone else. And maybe in about 5-10 minutes, Laura, I will check up on you to make sure that you're still okay. And if you need help, just let me know, okay, Laura?
Okay.
All right. Don't be shy to ask for help. Remember, I'm here to help, okay? I'm here to help. That is what I'm here for.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, so also in the 1920s class, we talked about, I'm going to integrate some indigenous contents. A lot of indigenous population could not afford the new farm machinery. Again, remember, there are a lot of new consumer items being available during this time period, but again, a lot of indigenous population cannot afford these items as well. Some employment happened in non-Aboriginal workplaces, such as logging and fishing. Logging and fishing. Remember class, my goal is always try to integrate as much indigenous content as I can. So as we go through each decade or time period, I'm going to talk a little about indigenous First Nation population and what their lived experience were like back then. So get into the 30s, 1930s. So I want to talk about what happened in the 30s, why it was not really a fun time in the 30s, and so forth. So understanding Canada in the 1930s. Well, it was basically a period of social economic shock that left millions unemployed, hungry, and homeless, otherwise known as the Great Depression. And we'll talk more about the Great Depression and what it was in a couple seconds. But factors that led to this economic and social shock that left millions of Canadians and even worldwide unemployed, hungry, and homeless was a couple of these factors. High tariffs, otherwise known as high taxes, the economy dependent on export from other countries. There's overextending credits from other countries as well, high debt loans, and efficient financial regulation, lots of misleading or misguided government intervention, and a lot of public panic happened as well. So all these factors and the outcome of World War One and just the way it was in terms of economically, it led to the Great Depression, which is what we're going to talk about right now. Again, the Great Depression, there will be a question on it on assignment number 3, asking your thoughts about it, why it happened, why it transpired, and so forth. So the Great Depression pretty much started in the 1930s and pretty much lasted throughout the 1930s. Okay, so all this that we're going to talk about happened in the 1930s. It was a dark period in Canadian history, very dark. A lot of people know about it, but it was a dark period in Canadian society. Almost like First Nation residential school was a dark period in Canadian history, but not many people know that. But this dark period of history, in terms of the Great Depression, everyone knew it. Everyone knew it. Many lives were bruised, shattered, and broken because of the Great Depression. So again, not a fun time. Bruised, shattered, and broken. Again, very strong words that we're using right now. And some questions that I have posted on the screen right now are what caused it? Why was it so dreadful? What was so dreadful about it? How did it create fear that will haunt people for a lifetime? Again, just some questions to think about as we go through the next couple slides on the Great Depression. So what caused the Great Depression? What was the Great Depression? Why was it so dreadful? Why did it create so many fears that will haunt people for a lifetime? The Great Depression. Sounds dark and scary, eh? So what was the Great Depression? What was the Great Depression? Well, it simply happened in a couple of ways. So basically, it was a period where stock market grew, stocks grew, and it doubled in value, and people were making a great deal of money because of this, and it did not show any signs of slowing down in terms of the stock market. So anyone invested in stocks, they can make a lot of money in a short period of time. If that stock grew in value, boom, they made money. If that stock dropped, boom, they lost money. But it was a period where stock grew, it doubled in value, and people made great deal of money because of it. And it did not slow down. It kept going up and up and up. So what happened was 2 key events. One, October 24th, 1929, known as Black Thursday. Okay, this was in October 24th, 1929. This was known as Black Thursday. So on October 24, 1929, Black Thursday, the stock market crashed. Okay, the New York stock market crashed, and people started to sell all the shares as fast as they could so that they would not lose that much money. So that started. So why did it crash? Well, stock had been overpriced. In other words, the price of the share did not reflect the true value of the companies that they were selling. So a couple of days later, on October 29th, 1929, this was known as Black Tuesday. So Black Tuesday, the stock market crashed, and there was no turning back. So again, it left millions of people with no jobs. People were laid off. Companies went bankrupt. They lost tons of money. 1/3 of Canadians lost their jobs. Again, because of all this chaos of the Great Depression, was that companies were making more products than people could afford. Okay, so again, a lot of things changed and took a turn very, very quickly. Again, stock market crash. This was known as a symptom of economic instability. Okay, in terms of economically. Laura, can you see the Start Bridget screen now, Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright, I know that you have logged on, so which is great. Alright, so I'm going to pull up last week's question. Do you see that now? Or is it still loading?
It takes a while to change or show what you're writing.
Oh, does it? Okay, so what do you see on on the screen right now? Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
It says, what was the Great Depression?
Oh, okay. I I switched slides. Hold on. So wait a few seconds and
It
tell
shows
me
your slides.
when it changed. Do you still see the Great Depression on the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
it just shows those three little page things.
Okay. Well,
It shows.
you see it now? Yeah? No? Yeah? No?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is assignment number 2. I'm gonna write it on the screen. You know, it may not show up on your screen right away, but this is assignment number 2 that you're working on, right, Laura? Assignment number 2.
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, describe the income war tax was question number 3. And again, you can find that on page number 5. Okay, Laura? So if you want, you can jot that down and write page number 5 beside it. That should be at the very top. And question number 4 simply asks, what was the guilt cost? And what did Germany have to do after the war? And that's on the bottom of page number 5. And describe the League of Nations and its purpose. That's also on the bottom of page number 5 as well. Did you find all the answers okay, Laura? Or are you still working on it slowly?
It's working on number 5 now.
You're working on number 5 now? Alright, good stuff. Good. So the League of Nations. Again. What was it? And its purpose. Again, you can find that on the bottom of page number 5. And once you've finished that question, Laura, you're done. You're done assignment number 2. And you can move on to today's lesson, which contains assignment number 3. Assignment number 3. So let's go back to that slide in terms of the Great Depression and finish up that lecture. and hopefully you'll see how far we can get, and then you can start working on assignment number 3. Okay there, Laura?
Okay.
Good stuff. So how slow or does your smart Bridget take to load? Like a really long time? So if I write something or if I change slides, does it take a long time for it to load?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, that's not really helpful. So I guess I'll try to slow it down a bit in terms of going through slides.
I'm still showing that assignment 2.
It's still showing assignment 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I always switch back into the Great Depression. All right. Well, again, Laura, you can still listen.
Yeah.
Okay, you can still listen, and you can still use the textbook as your reference as well.
I'll just go back to assignment 2 after at home.
Okay. Sounds good. So in your textbook, Laura, you can turn to page number 6. At the bottom of page number 6, that's where we're at right now. Okay. Bottom of page number 6. And the top of page 7. Okay, so if you want to follow along and look at the Great Depression or read through the Great Depression, that's all right there. So we just pretty much finished up talking about what caused the Great Depression, what was the Great Depression, and why was it so dreadful and caused so many fear.
Okay.
So the Great Depression, again, it was plagued by fear, fear of going into debt, not being able to repay money, fear of losing jobs, fear of seeing one's life saving and investment gone and wiped out, and fear that one day the Great Depression could return. Okay, so that's why the Great Depression still causes many fears and anxiety in terms of nowadays, in terms of some citizens. But the Great Depression also has cause and effect. Okay, it did not just affect citizens socially and economically, but also affected farmers as well. Farmers in the Prairie provinces, so people in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, in those areas as well. So other countries produce more grains than Canada during this time period. So again, we're focused on farmers right now. It's on page 7 in your textbook, okay, class? So other countries start to produce more grains than Canada. Again, as you know, in the prairies, a lot of wheat is being grown in terms of agriculture over there. The farmers were hit the hardest in terms of the effects of the Great Depression. Severe drought happened. A drought. In other words, lack of rainfall, water happened in Western Canada, so there's really no rainfall in 7 years, and as a result of that, it created a lot of dust storm or a little dust. Grasshoppers, this little insects, or superbug. There was a grasshopper plague that took place where millions and millions of grasshopper came pretty much out of nowhere. They appeared and started eating all the crops. Again, not fun. So really, farmers really had to rely on luck and good fortune if they want to make it through. A lot of farmers couldn't afford fuel for their vehicles, so they had to hook up farm animals to their car. This was known as the Bennett buggy. Again, no income, also they couldn't really pay for bills. Again, they really had to sell the home, the land, and really had a really difficult time. Really difficult time. Again, farmers in the Prairie provinces, they were hit the hardest. Other countries produced more grains than Canada. A severe drought happened. Grasshopper plague took place. And really had to rely on luck if they really want to make it through. So tough times for these farmers. In terms of other provinces around Canada, not just in the prairies, but in BC, resource-based industries and agriculture declined and dropped. Newfoundland, well, simply Newfoundland was not even a province yet in Canada, so don't worry about those guys. And Quebec and Ontario had manufacturer sectors hit the hardest in terms of layoffs. People were laid off from their jobs or simply lost their jobs. So again, income was down 50% and unemployment rate was down by 27%. Again, this is just some fun facts and information that came out of the Great Depression in terms of all over Canada. So to pretty much wrap up the 1930s, the 1930s can be really be looked at challenges where citizens and individuals really challenge the government individually and their families. They really had to rely on government assistance relief programs. So in other words, social welfare, unemployment, money. So again, they really had to look at their government and ask them for really help to help out the citizens during these tough times. To really take into account what the 1930s were all about, it was not just about the Great Depression. It was not just about unemployment, relief lines, dust storms, and hobos. But the 1930s can be summed up by looking at a story of society's struggles. Okay, so again, this is a period of dark times in Canadian history, a time where a lot of citizens, a lot of citizens, really struggled. Okay, that's the main focus that we really want to emphasize. A society that was based on struggles and really point to the government for help. So how did the 1930s ended? And I post a question on my screen. How does the Great Depression change the role of government in Canada? And the answer to that can be simply be summed up as Canadians can now expect their government to react when a financial crisis occurs based on action and intervention. So now when something happens, when a crisis breaks out, we as citizens and as Canadians expect our government to do something about it, okay, based on actions, programs. Hence why nowadays we have, again, social welfare program, EI, and other programs that we can help support living and live a fundamental life. So that was the Great Depression, and that was the 30s. So now we're going to move on to page 8 and page 9 in our textbook. Okay, so the next few slides deal with page 8 and page 9 in our textbook. Again, so now we're really dealing with social political movements. Okay, social political movements. So political concerns based on women. Again, we talked about women before a few weeks ago, based on their lived experience, based how they were known for domestic duties within the home in terms of cooking, cleaning, and mating, how they did not have equal rights compared to men. Again, we're still looking at the same fundamentals, but we're still building on it. So now we're dealing with prohibition, which is simply the definition for the sale and ban of alcohol and the sale and ban of alcohol consumption. And they really want to get the right to vote. Again, during this time period, women did not have the right to vote federally or provincially. So these were the two main goals that they really want to emphasize. Number one, prohibition, and number two, getting the right to vote. So I want to talk about the temperance movement. Okay, so the temperance movement was simply a group of women, mainly white Protestant Christian British origin women. These were known as the temperance movement, where they got together and simply said, hey, we should be equal as men, and we should change society that reflect their point of view. So we know that they wanted to ban alcohol and the sale of alcohol. But why? They believe that it was the boost of alcohol that caused unemployment, disease, prostitution, poverty, immortality for society. In other words, they didn't really like it in terms of how it was influencing society. So these women got together. Again, the temperance movement not just happened in one spot in Canada, but it was popular across Canada, especially in major cities. Major cities. Again, these were a social political campaign. They got together and really protested and pressured the government to change laws so that it would reflect their lifestyle and in point of view. Basically, they got together and jotted down ideas on to how to improve Canadian society. Again, it could be hospitals, schools, and prisons. Again, they didn't really just focus on prohibition and a ban and sale of alcohol consumption, but again, ways to improve Canadian society. It could be hospitals, schools, and prison. One popular temperance movement group was the Women's Christian Temperance Union. That was a really popular group that came out of the temperance movement. Okay, it's a temperance movement. So continue looking at the temperance movement. All these ideas that these women, a group of women got down, it did not always work. Why? Again, there was underground sales, bootleggers, smugglers, and other ways that they can consume and sell alcohol. And called upon the government, they simply just said no, or they really just ignored all their suggestions. The government really do much in terms of helping these movements. Okay, seem to ignore all their suggestions. So pretty much the only way to change society for these women is the right to vote. Okay, the right to vote. They need to gain the right to vote so that they can vote and change laws in their point of view. So they held demonstrations, collected name on petitions, they wrote articles, newspaper, letters, magazines to voice their opinion. Okay, they wanted the right to vote because the government really didn't do much. They ignored all their suggestions, so they need to take matters into their own hands. But they couldn't because they couldn't really vote because women were not seen as equal to men. So they need to change that and gain the right to vote. So what happened? What came out of that? When the vote was won. So what happened was that in 1917, going back a couple years, 1917, women were finally granted the right to vote in 1970 federally, but really limited until the year afterwards in 1918, where all women can finally vote. That's federally. I can see on my screen I have pretty much a list of all the Canadian provinces and territories. Different province in terms of women getting the right to vote was won in different years. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta were all in 1916. BC, Ontario was not until 1917. Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, again, was not until 1918. And PEI was not till 1922. Quebec, not till 1940. Again, so provincially, all different years, but federally, it all came to 1918. In terms of Aboriginal women, they were denied the right to vote until 1960. 1960. Again, a lot of discrimination took place for indigenous population. But Asian women and Asian men, again, racism played a factor, and they did not get the right to vote until the 1940s. So again, even though women won the right to vote mainly in 1916 and 1718, people of colors and different race, again, they were still faced with racism and discrimination. So that pretty much wraps up today's lesson and wraps up lesson number 1. So right now, class, I have assignment number 3 questions on my screen. So we can quickly go over these questions right now, or we can save until next class. But keep in mind that assignment number 3, it's one of the bigger assignments. Okay, so 29 marks. Again, nothing new, nothing fancy. I'm still looking for the same expectation. Just more questions, all it is. Okay, name it 3 inventions that took place in the 1920s. What happened? What caused the Great Depression? And what do you think about it? Challenges in terms of farmers had to overcome in the Great Depression. There's a chart comparing men and women in terms of education, employment, and family roles. Talked about what was the temperance movement, what was the goal, what did they want to do. And there was a question of, do you feel it's important for women to get a right vote now? How did women got the right to vote? And again, comparing women's rights today to back then in the 1990s. Okay, just a little quick snapshot of what assignment number 3 is. Again, 8 questions, 29 marks, but all the same thing. So that pretty much wraps up lesson number 1. So I'll go over these questions again on Thursday, and we'll start looking at military history again in terms of Canada and the Second World War. Any questions? Are you all right there over there, Laura? Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No?
No? You're good?
Yeah.
So you got assignment number 2 done, so hopefully you can get that to your DC and they can fax that to me, and I'll mark that and give you feedback and mark it for you. In the meantime, continue to work on it. Okay, so work on assignment number 3. Again, all these questions are not too difficult. Again, any questions, Laura or anyone else, just let me know. Again, I'm here to help. I don't mind stopping throughout my lessons and helping and putting guidance as well. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, Laura? So I'll see you again on Thursday in class.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. And hopefully, smart Bridget won't give you that much trouble at the Learn Center. And hopefully that will load. And we'll continue looking at Canadian history from there. Okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, Laura, have a good night. Again, thank you so much for calling and listening and participating. Thank you for Dina M, and for Hope as well. Probably at home in her home or laptop logged on. All right, class. Well, thanks so much for listening and participating. Again, my name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for PLAR History and Geography here at WASA. Have a good night, everyone, and I'll see everyone here again on Thursday as we begin lesson number 2. Okay, lesson number 2. All right, bye, Laura, and have a good night. Good night, class.
Good night.